Hi there, I'm Christine Conrad, and you're listening to another episode of Innovative Tac-Tips. And I'm with the wonderful Michael Gottwalt. And before I go on and pick his brain with so many questions, Michael, first of all, do my Michael.
Yeah, you can
What
go
do you
with
do?
Mike. My mom called me Michael when she was upset with me. So call me Mike unless you're
Okay, good. And what do you do? And then I guess what makes your heart sing about what you do?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm the VP of Cloud Solutions and Enablement at Jenny. So might be the world's longest title, right, of a title I've ever had, right? But bottom line is this, is that Jenny's a distribution house. We source equipment out on-prem phone systems and things like that. And then we also have a cloud side of the house. And so the master agency brokerage, or, TSD as they're called now, I take care of the cloud side of the house. Okay, so two different sides, two different parts of it, but we all kind of work together at the same time. So that's what I
Cool.
do. So you kind of asked me what makes my heart sing. Well, I think probably, and if you're like me, we've been around in the business for a while, and I guess the one thing probably is hanging out at channel partners, any of the events that we go to. So many fun people through the years. So much fun. And honestly, I can't think of another profession, probably, say maybe the fire department, which we might talk about here in a second. But, the folks that I've met in this business, so we have a ball every time we get together, the people we work with, the people that we used to work with, the new people that we meet, things that we do. It's really a unique industry. And so I just think that's an absolute.
Yeah, again, I should know better. I always have a soft spot for people that are from the Midwest. We're built different because January and February come around, it's like negative 20 below windshield. Like you're like, just, I don't know, you look like the Michelin Man, but obviously with coats and snowsuits, like you don't look like the same person. So, I guess what got you into, tech, telecom, I guess all the above,
All the above.
like cloud. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you and I have talked about this a little bit in the past, but one of those things where my wife and I adopted a little girl from China back in 2002, and I needed a calling card. And my calling card led me to a company called Cognigen, of which Patrick O'Horn, who's one of the co-owners of Talaris, happened to be the webmaster there. And next thing you know, I'm selling calling cards / data T1s as an agent. And it got me involved with a couple of nice accounts that actually sold in my early days as an agent. And because of that, when it came time for me to be able to leave the fire department, I came on board as a channel manager at Talaris, and that got me started in the telecom side.
So, yeah. No, I also want to kind of talk about the fire station and being a firefighter and paramedic. I mean, I learned really fast that I don't have the stomach for that. I appreciate first responders. I appreciate what they do, what they go through. I guess, were you like, what made you, I guess, when you graduated school, did you automatically feel like you wanted to be a first responder? Like, I guess you're kind of responding to calling card too, I guess, if you want to say like doing that.
No, it just kind of came out as one of those things that you weren't planning on. When I first got our workforce after college, it was a bad time in the industry out there just from the standpoint of jobs. And happened to get hooked up with a guy that was the chief of our local fire department. And he had some interest in me, and I had some interest in doing something for a job. And next thing you know, the fire service started. So I went from a small department to a mid-sized department that had about 100 firefighters, so nothing huge. Mostly a bedroom community, and for anybody listening to this will probably say, yeah, you weren't a real fireman because it was all bedroom fires and kitchen fires. That's probably true. Not a lot of commercial stuff, but a lot of EMS calls, through the years. But you mentioned about, taking care of people in some of their most, trying times. We always had to look at it as I never put any of these people in this situation, and it was kind of my job to get them through maybe the worst time of their life, get them to where they needed to be as quick as we could. And that was true from an EMS standpoint or a fire standpoint. And so we had to learn how to Well, that actually translated really well into other life skills. That you got just a few minutes to size somebody up, figure out how you're going to deal with them, and then move on. To how do you get them to the place you needed to get them to. And I learned a lot to transfer it over into this business.
Yeah, and also like when there's bigger events too, they probably source like firefighters or paramedics from because whenever like there's bigger events and stuff, I feel like if there's needed, I feel like there's people that like come from different. I don't want to say districts because that sounds like is it district? I feel like that's school. It's okay.
It's mutual aid they call it, right? And so other cities, other places will need them for that, and it could be for a variety of things. You can get into mass casualty incidents, you can get into rescues and things like that. Not just fires. There's a lot of other things.
Yeah. So I'm gonna. Throughout the years, has there been a memorable experience that you that like just stands out right away throughout? It could be from being a first responder, or it could be from your agent days, or it could be today. Is there anything that you remember that?
Well,
is the most memorable so far?
Someday, if you have a beer with me, I'll tell you some really good ones. Right? We can't repeat each year, right? But no. So we actually had a couple of really nice saves. Ice rescues are always a big one, right? I had a few of those to went out on the ice and brought people in, and honestly, a few times cardiac arrests work out positively. We had a few of those. Those are probably the ones that stand out the most. Of things where somebody was truly could have been dead, but they weren't. We were able to do what we needed.
I mean, I think about like the Bengals and the Bills game on the first of, I think it was like the first or second of, and I'm like, he was like technically pronounced deceased for like, and then all of a sudden I was like, it's just insane how your body, it's just the chemical, like it's chemical, I don't know, it's like electric currents. I don't know. Anyways, I'm like, all that stuff.
The automatic defibrillators are the thing that every business needs to have, because that is the thing that'll actually save somebody out there, right? It's being able to shock somebody quickly back into a rhythm.
Crazy. So with that, so I like to ask this question because I believe failure is like throwing in the towel, not throwing up. That would not be good. Don't throw up. Right. Don't do that. But like throwing in the towel or just giving up. Is there anything that you had deemed a failure that later set you up for success that kind of turned the other direction?
Absolutely. So, and I think being in telecom, we've all been in this spot, right? You either leave a position because you want to, or you leave a position because somebody else wanted you to, right? That's happened across the board. And I've had both sides of that in my career. If I've done this. But even for either one of those times, right? When you leave, I think you're better for it, because the next place that you land, you take things with you that you do better, that you wish you'd have done at the place you're at work. And the only way to get to that next spot is you had to live through the spot behind that. And so I've had multiple incidents with that. I think we all have, right? Where it's all things have changed, both by design and undesign. So it's been good. I'm glad that all those changes happened to me.
Yeah. And then I like this question too. Is there anything that you would tell your younger self today? Like just advice, maybe 2 cents advice, like would there be anything that you would like kind of just reinforce or just, like instill in your younger self when you started
I think you just keep going, right? And don't take things so hard. Don't take things so serious, right? Things are not, this isn't rocket science. I've said this on a couple other times that there's things we can all do that just go back, take stock of what you did. What could you do better, and move on? And moving on is an okay thing. It's not a horrible thing.
Yeah, I would say it's not rocket science unless you're selling it. Unless you're selling rocket science, then it's rocket science, but it's not rocket science other than that. Yeah, so that's what I'm like. And then everyone can do their part, right? Like I feel like there's always people can contribute different skills. And anyways, like some people use their left side of the brain more than others. And anyways, it just like depends on what you're adept at. And so I agree with you. Just like keep going. So with that, has there been anything that you've done, let's say like in the telecom world that you changed someone's life that you didn't expect?
That's an interesting question. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and I would say probably didn't know it at the time, but you realize it now. Is that there's been people that I've worked with, coworkers, and then there's also people that work for me that have gone on to way better things than I've ever done, in the telecom space, and that's really fun when there's folks out there that have done really really well, super smart people that've done really good things, and I like to think that maybe in the early days I had a little something to do with that, talking to people and getting them started. And so that's probably been the most fun. As you get older, you get to sit back and reflect on a lot of that. And yeah, I've noticed that quite a few times actually. So I've been happy about it.
Yeah, it's fun to see people flourish, right? To see that like obtain their ultimate goal in life, or just like I guess their ultimate potential. I would say because there's always room to improve. Like I I mean, like no one can be perfect, right? We're always like improving and getting better and adapting and evolving. So I think to your point, it's like to give the opportunity to someone and see them flourish is always like it's a grateful feeling. It like warms my heart, fills my bucket or my love bucket or whatever. So I can relate to that. Is there any? I love books. Is there any books that you have read throughout your career, or it could be one or it could be many, and that has most influenced your life, or not, and is there a book that you've given most as a gift?
Yeah, there is, as a matter of fact. And
Mm-hmm.
so back in my earliest days at Tulares, when I was there, Adam Edwards got us started reading books, and he was famous for different books that he liked to throw out there. Getting Things Done by David Allen is probably my favorite business type book that's out there. There's a lot of books. I read a lot of mysteries and World War II books and stuff. But from a business standpoint, that's a book that I give out a lot. It's a book I talk to my teams about all the time. And if you haven't read it, you should really take a look at it. It's not that long. It's really good for planning your day, planning your life, how you get things done. I have to go back from time to time because I get stuck doing things that are outside of that. And when I do, I go back and revisit it a little bit. And it really does reset my daily process a little bit of how I handle things, especially emails. I've got a tendency to get really stuck in emails, and pretty soon I'm a slave to my emails on a daily basis. That'll get me out of it,
Yeah,
get me in a better spot.
yeah, I agree with you. Email has a purpose, but also like you're just like, oh my goodness, it's like okay, how do I? It's like organizing because you get so many notifications. You're like it's like the red bubble theory, right? Like you're like my mom has like 10,000 emails. I'm like how do you have that? Like that would just make me go insane. I mean, obviously they're promo emails, but like when you get work emails, you get like CC'd on stuff and you're like, oh my goodness. I almost have to like create rules and being like, if this says this, then go into this bucket because you can be buried in your email. And then some would just be like a collab, like a DM or a collaborate. Like collaboration is key, I think, because it's like, anyways, I agree with you on that. Is organizing your day, organizing your thoughts, just like yeah, I have this picture that it's like making a list and then basically crossing number one off your list is like basically the number one thing to do is like cross that off and then we're like going to keep going, like start with number one and keep going down. So you said World War II. I in high school, which was a bit ago, did a senior thesis on my worldview. I studied world history and all religions, and World War II and the Vietnam War are like just really interesting. And I love Winston Churchill. Is there anything about World War II that you, I guess, that's like your favorite part, or if there's anything that like about it that you like can teach or like tell people about?
Yeah. So actually, I was fortunate enough for me, not fortunate enough for my uncle to have to go through this, but I actually had an uncle in World War II that was in northern Africa and traveled with the tanks and stuff through, all through northern Africa. And so he was in the EMS part or the army as they were rolling through there. But being able to catch some of his stories as he did that, I just always found interesting. So I read a few books on that, and then a lot of. I also had another uncle that was in the Navy, so he spent time in the Pacific, and so just reading some of the different books in the history on the Navy ships and some of the battles.
Well, and even like back so my grandpa was enlisted, but he was in the Air Force, Army Air Force before it split. And I think he was about to get deployed, but then it like we won, or like we all, so it like pretty much stopped, but he was like training to do that. But I just think like in the States, it's so interesting how just like the mechanics of like creating the airplanes and like just all of the backstory of like just the machinery and just what we did to get ready and just kind of, yeah, the biographies. I think that that's super interesting to learn stories. I know when I was a bartender in college, I loved listening to vets because it was just like hearing their stories and like understanding like just because you can't get that, right? You can get it from a book, but like firsthand, you're just like, okay, keep going. I want to hear it more. So, world history is super interesting. Super interesting. So to follow up with that, if you had a billboard that reached billions of people, would there be, it could be a phrase, it could be a word, it could be a novel. It what would you put on it?
I use this a lot. It's 3 words. Everything's fixable. Okay. And at the end of the day is, as I like to say, whether it's a partner, whether it's a supplier, we all run into problems at the end of the day, right? And there's a lot of stuff that we allow to get too crazy sometimes for us, like we get too worked up about it. And I always like to say, it's not brain surgery at this point, right? It's just like, take a step back, take a breath, let's take a look at this, and let's figure out how to fix it, And so you got to give people their time to vent sometimes, but also we got to spend some time sitting back and going, how do I fix it now, right? And there's only a couple things you can do to fix it. We can keep our feet all we want, and that's okay, but it's like, what is it that's going to fix this? And we can either do it or we can't. And if you can't, then we got to move on, and it's just like, that's all there is. That's all we can do, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
We can probably all use it in our lives.
Yeah. I always am like, it's like not my circus, not my monkeys. Like I'm not like you can really dwell on things, right? You're like, and then you like go into this like just the spiral, and you're like, wait, how did I get there? How did I get there? Okay, let's like come back to earth. I guess to add to that, is there anything that you do to like recenter yourself? Like if you get, because I'm reading another book that's 48 Laws of Power, and when you're in a heightened like basically like either frustrated, angry, emotional state, right? You lose track of like logic and rationality. Is there anything, and even when you get frustrated, right? When you're reading an email, you're like, you read it in a way where you would email it to the person, right? Like depending on the background, the backstory. Is there anything that you do to like recenter yourself?
A lot of times I go back to what I did when I was in the fire department, where we had, minutes to get under getting somebody's psyche, so to speak, right? So I could get done what I had to get done, get these guys where we need to get them through. And so a lot of times I'll look at that with people that get cranked up about things. It's like, let's take a good hard look at where they're at. Let's take a look at where they need to be. How can I get them there? I'm only going to be with them for a short time here until I get this fixed for them, right? And so I'll look at, I try not to get emotional. Sometimes it's hard, right? Sometimes you write that email and then you look at it and you go, nah, I better back off on that one. That's not where I need. It's not going to serve any purpose other than me being maybe happy about what I wrote at the time. It's not going to fix what the problem is. So I try to not get emotional about things when we do it. I try to back off and take another hard look at it and try to see things in somebody else's eyes that might be a little bit.
Yeah. Is there anything that you hear in the industry that would not like, I don't want to say bad recommendations, but is there any things that people can keep an eye out for in the industry that like they can, like if you hear something, like is there a common, I guess not advice, but like are there any like things that you hear that if people hear it that maybe to double check your sources or anything with even cloud, because cloud is still, there's a lot of players in cloud.
A little different direction probably here than maybe what you were thinking probably, right? And, part of that is that I think PE money has changed a lot of the way we do things, private equity money, right? And I think it's caused us to, it's all or nothing, get it done right now. Whether it's sales, whether it's tasks, whatever it is, the PE guys drive a lot of that. And they have that right to do that. They've invested a lot of money in a lot of these places, and they're looking for returns when they do that. But I think being around PE money quite a bit here lately, luckily not the company I'm at here now, but it really does change things. That there's little to lack of development that goes on, and it's all what can you do right now for me? How can I share partner into this place? How can I go get his business and bring it here? As opposed to how can I help this partner maybe maximize his potential with all his accounts? And so sometimes take a little bit of time to do, and you may not either, and I could say I'm lucky enough with a couple of guys, even some single shop guys that have gone on to sell tons and tons of it, like way more than what some of these big companies have. And they do it by themselves, and so and it's just some development and just being around in the right place at the right time and helping people get through that stuff. So that's one thing that I see in this industry that does really cause a lot of hot twos going on, is the PE guys really do drive a lot of what we do. Definitely change.
Yeah. Yeah. It tends to seem more transactional than actual, like, I feel like loyalty piece of it, right? It sounds a little bit like there's I think, yeah. I always say like when the transaction happens, like that's where like pretty much like the work. I mean, yes, getting the sale, getting all that stuff, getting everyone together and stuff, I think from the contract perspective is work. But I think when it comes to like actually fulfilling the contract, that like that's where the work starts. And I think that creates like that loyalty and like the trust. And trust is like the backbone of business is, like, is it reliable? Is it trustworthy? Those two things. And if it's always pushing like the dollar sign, I think it tends to lose the value of, the meaning. As you said, is like taking a second look of like a holistic view of like, okay, do they really need all of these like features, bells and whistles, or do they just need like, if you're thinking about cars, right? Like you're thinking like, do they just need the stock model instead of like all of the luxury bells and whistles, which is like, I don't know, a pretty penny. So I understand when it comes to that piece because you're just like, no, I don't need that. So kind of, I understand that. I guess maybe like one last question. Do you have anything going on behind the scenes that you can share with anyone? And then if people have questions after listening to you, is there a place where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the biggest thing that we have going on here at Jenny right now is really dialing in the fact of our distribution partners with our cloud partners. And I think a lot of companies out there have been trying hard to figure out how to make that work. I think, we like to think that we found that secret sauce on our side. And so we've been really successful with distribution partners that we've been dealing with. And so I'm still amazed every day, not coming from the distribution side of the world, how much distribution goes, how many on-prem phones are sold on a regular basis. That still just blows me away every day when I see that. Big piece of what we do. It's a big piece of what customers too, So I know we get so caught up in the cloud space that sometimes we think that's the only thing that's out there, and it's not. There's room for both, and there's ways to capitalize both of those. And so that's what we're dialing in at Jenny, and I like to think that we're doing, a really good job with that and being really successful with that. But and then as far as getting a hold of me, we have our contact information on jenny.com, JENNE.com, but also LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn for 1,000 years probably, right? And so you can certainly find information there. More than likely, I'm probably hooked up with everybody that is probably going to watch this podcast, probably connected with them sometime. But we connect with you and discuss anything that you got going. And as Kristen knows, I'll definitely answer any time you ping me, right? I answered you, right?
Yeah. Again, our inboxes get filled up. Like if it takes a second, like I understand because like your inbox gets. I feel like there's people that are like, okay, I know this person. So I understand that.
And I look at LinkedIn a little different. If somebody takes the time to message me on LinkedIn, I almost always reply, unless it's a really true, go work at home scheme or something, right? That I try to steal.
Yeah. You appreciate the hustle, but then you're like, well, I don't really need this right now. So like you just appreciate the hustle. Well, I admire the Jenny team. Maybe because I have a soft spot in my heart for Midwesterns, but just in general, I know that you guys are also across the U.S. too, from a national perspective. But thank you for your time, and I might see you in Ohio in the future. So hopefully at a Ohio University basketball game. Hopefully, knock on wood.
For the Browns,
yeah.
We'll get you to a Browns game sometime. So,
yeah, that too. I would love to do that. So, anyways, thank you for your time, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.